Welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. We believe life is about how we react. All right, welcome back. Or maybe welcome for the first time.
Yeah.
This is the Two Disabled Dudes podcast, and my name is Sean. I'm so excited that you're tuning in today. We want to let you know, as a reminder, Kyle and I will both be in San Diego September 19th and 20th. We are attending the Global Genes Rare Patient Summit.
Patient Advocacy Summit, yeah.
Yeah, something like that. The summit. We'll be there, and we're excited to be there. We're going to be hosting a panel at the end of day one, so if you're attending the conference, it'd be easy to meet there. If you're not attending, and maybe you live around San Diego, or you just happen to be in San Diego, it's beautiful. We'd love to connect with you for a coffee or lunch or something. Be sure to reach out to us through the website. You can email us there or find us on social media. So don't forget, September 19th and 20th, we want to meet you in San Diego. Kyle, how are you today?
I'm doing good, dude. I'm looking forward to being in San Diego for Global Genes. But I wanted to wrap up a story that I talked about a few weeks ago, a little while ago, on episode 80 anyway. I talked about booking a flight from Columbus, Ohio to Philadelphia, and all the direct flights are really expensive, so I booked a flight to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and it was going through Philadelphia, and I called the airline, and she told me that there were ethical issues.
Oh, yeah, I remember
with doing that, yeah, and so I was like,
terrible
all right.
human.
Yeah, she was like, you're bad. I'm like, all right, whatever.
Basically.
And so anyway, I just wanted to update everybody and let them know that that was a successful trip. We had an awesome time in Ohio riding for the Ride Taxi Virtual Challenge. And I took my flight on the way home. My freaking flight was at 6 a.m. So I got to the airport. I got to the TSA security at 4:30 a.m. and I'm going through and they flag my bag and I'm like, oh, that sucks. And the guy digs through my bag and he takes my toothpaste and my hair gel that I had just bought. And I was like, seriously? He's all, do you want to go check your bag? I'm like, no, of course I don't. It's freaking 4:30 a.m. I don't want to check my bag. And I'm really not excited that you just stole my stuff. So, anyway, no big deal, but it's just a poke in the eye at 4:30 a.m., you know?
Yeah, right.
So,
question for you. Did the gel and toothpaste meet TSA requirements?
No, they were over 3.4 ounces. But I know the rules now, and I went on and bought a stupid little container to put my hair gel in.
Now you know the rules. You're telling me since 9/11, so what is that, 7 years, 8 years, you've traveled, and you never knew there were limitations on toothpaste or hair gel.
I knew that, but
or deodorant.
So the stupidest thing is that I flew to Ohio with the same exact thing in my bag, and it made it there. Just not on the way back. But anyway, I have a 3.4 ounce container now. So
I'm proud of you. Yeah, every time I take a chance, they usually take it. Pull it, steal it. Although I will tell you, I was actually surprised one day. I took a Hydro Flask style bottle of water, or not bottle, but I don't know what you call them. There were probably there was a little bit of water in it. Like, by a little bit, I mean maybe half a cup or a full cup. But it got through security.
Yeah, dude.
Nobody waved it down. Nobody said I gotta dump it. I was shocked.
It's weird. Sometimes stuff makes it, and sometimes it doesn't. Yeah, I don't know.
Probably
Oh,
all
so
matter of
no,
what mood they're in.
the next one was that I was going on this bike ride that I'll talk about a little bit later, but I had one of those CO2 cartridges in my bag for pumping up a bike tire, right? So
Totally.
the guy flags my bag and takes it out and goes, "Oh, you can't have this." And he asks the supervisor, and he's like, "Oh, it's for the wheelchair, right?" And I'm like, yeah, it's for the wheelchair. Even though I have solid tires on my wheelchair, they don't even take air. I'm just like, yeah, that's right. And so I put it back in. And then the next flight, I forgot about it. Again, they took it without even asking what it's for. Anyway, yeah, so it's just whatever.
That one doesn't really surprise me because essentially, isn't that some form of gas?
Yeah, basically, it's just a tiny bomb.
Yeah, so I'm not surprised they kept that because you look like. I mean, that's suspicious in and of itself.
Yeah, thanks a lot, man.
So, question on your flight: Did you book your flight the way you talked about and just get off the flight and quit mid flight plan?
Yeah, and I remember you and I talked about like, oh, maybe you should tell them that you're not coming back just to give them the heads up. Nope, I didn't. I was so ready to get home, and I was hungry and whatever. I was just left. So
all right,
everything worked out though, I think.
Well, I'm glad it's fine. I'm glad they didn't, spank you or send you to the principal's office for abandoning your flight.
Put me in the holding cell at the airport. Okay.
Anyway.
Sean, what the heck are we talking about today?
Well, I think what we want to talk about is maybe getting out of your comfort zone a bit. You can label it any which way you want, but for the most part, life happens when we stretch ourselves a little bit. So today we want to talk about maybe the power or the value or just why it's helpful or important to get out of your freaking comfort zone.
Yeah, it's so nice to sit at home and watch Netflix and whatever, go to work, come home, and that's your life, right?
Kind of have a basic routine.
Yeah, basic routine. It's so satisfying sometimes, but we both know that all of the important things in our lives and the stories that we have, they've all happened for me anyway, all this awesome stuff happens when I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen on this trip or at this place, but we'll see. It's going to be exciting to figure it out. I don't even know if I can do this, but we're definitely going to find out, and I think that's where all the magic happens is when we step out of that comfort zone and figure out, throw it out there and see if we can go and get it.
Yeah, that's nothing new. And I would argue that probably all of our listeners totally get it. But maybe it's worth talking about as a reminder, maybe a form of motivation, because even for me, I love staying productive and staying busy. It's hard for me to sit down and watch Netflix. But every now and then I want to be lazy.
Right.
So just hearing some sort of reminder to step out of your comfort zone a little bit is helpful. So I think that's really what we want to do today. I think we all know you got to take a risk every now and then. And there is nothing comfortable about risk. Whether we're talking about risk with an exercise plan or risk with the diet, try something new, risk with your savings or investments or whatever it may be. Risk requires some sort of discomfort. I think that's probably part of the reason why it's called risk.
Yeah, and I think that higher reward requires higher risk many times.
Yeah,
and so, obviously it's some kind of balance there between risk and reward. But I agree. You have to have a tolerance for some kind of risk and some kind of, I don't know what's going to happen, but let's give it a shot. At some level, as it fits in your own situation. So
sure. So what is one of the events or some event maybe where you personally, Kyle, went way out of your comfort zone?
Well, so I studied abroad in college. It was it wasn't as crazy as, I don't know. I felt like it was crazy at the time. Not crazy, but like I felt like it was out of my zone at the time. Because I was going to a foreign country. I mean, I studied in New Zealand, so it's not like there was a foreign language or anything, but it was a place I'd never been, and I was going there for 10 weeks and going to meet all these new people and, go to a new school and all this stuff, but it was absolutely one of the best experiences of my life. Figuring out every week what the heck we were gonna do. The school part was good, but the part that really I feel like helped me grow as a person and was really, really exciting was we had every Friday off. So every Thursday night we would go to the rental car place, rent a car, and just start driving like as far as we could, and we'd have little guidebooks, right, and try and go see all these new things, but just figuring out how to make it happen with the people that I was with was a really rewarding experience.
I love it.
Whatever.
I think I didn't study abroad, but I spent almost a year in Germany, and although that was it's a fairly easy decision, right? Like, yeah, I'm going to do it. It sounds awesome. But the closer that flight day came and you're having to pack, you realize, oh, crap, I don't know anybody there. My family's 7,000 miles away or however far. It's not like you can just take a bus and go home for the weekend. Like, it's there's something that's shaky about being that far away from home. Experience of a lifetime, but sure, in the moment, it's a little scary.
And especially with Germany, like, am I going to even be able to, like, ask where the bathroom is when I get there? I don't know. What was your German experience, like, language experience at that point?
Yeah, I think I don't know if we're fortunate or if we're just unintelligent society. English is, I think, recognized still as the universal language.
Yeah.
So I got lucky and there wasn't much need to speak German or any French or anything else around where I visited. Especially where I was at, it's an area that's been populated by Americans since World War II. So English is very common there. I had fun learning little phrases and little words, but there was never a need to be fluent or even half fluent in German. So the language barrier really didn't exist too much back then, or probably even still today.
Yeah. So also I visited China one time. For 3 weeks, I had a friend, my friend Cole was staying there he had been there for 2 years by the time I got there. So I was like, all right, I better go. Since I know someone who lives there, I'll go. And as it was leading up to it, I was asking Cole how much Chinese he knows and like if we're going to be able to communicate and stuff. And he's like, oh, my Chinese is just as good as my Spanish. And so in my head, I'm like, oh, like, that's pretty good. I mean, you can get by. But no, I misheard him or misread it or something. And he said, my Chinese is not as good as my Spanish. And so like we could communicate enough to know if we were getting ripped off, but that's about it. But the Great Wall of China was incredible. You know how you make up these things in your head and you blow up these things and you're like, oh, I can't wait to get the Great Wall. And then it's a letdown once you actually get there. Well, the Great Wall did not let down at all. It was absolutely amazing to be there. And I felt like I had conquered the world when I finally got there.
And that feeling you wouldn't have experienced had you just stayed in your comfort zone.
Right.
You know, had you stayed at home or stayed where people speak your language, you may never have seen the Great Wall or felt like you're on top of the world.
Right. So
it's just kind of the whole point.
So the biggest one for me, I think, is Ratataxia. So we've talked about this a lot, and my book is all about this. And but you know, I was diagnosed with Friedreich's ataxia at the age of 17, and found out that it would shorten my life and it would deteriorate my abilities to walk and just to perform everyday functions. And so at some point, 10 years later, actually, I decided it was time to take action. And we did a bike ride from San Diego to Memphis, Tennessee. And for anyone, that's a long ways, right? Like 2,500 miles on a bike. And I have a disability. Talk about out of the comfort zone, out of the realm of reasonable things to do, right? But obviously, it turned into the most amazing experience of my life because I was willing to step out of my comfort zone and be like, all right, this is something I really wanted to do. I think it would be incredible to accomplish this. So I'm going to throw it out there and see if I can go get it. And so that's what we did. And so, Sean, before we started recording, I was talking about this section of my book that I wanted to read, but I just want to talk about the idea that I wrote about. So the original title of the book, one of the original titles was Moderation is the Enemy. And the idea is that I think, you know, moderation in everything is something that is sort of ubiquitous in our society, right? Like it's, you hear that all the time. Do it in moderation. Everything in moderation. That's the way it needs to go. Well, I believe that keeps many of us away from reaching our potential, our full potential. Because we're like, you know, we got to keep it in moderation. Maybe our full potential is far beyond what we're thinking in our head. But we have this thought that we need to keep it within reason, and that's not where we need to operate sometimes, I think.
I love that you're bringing it up this way. It makes me think of a book I'm reading or listening to right now called The Obstacle is the Way. And it's by Ryan Holiday. Anyway, he talks about this sort of idea, and he uses examples of a bunch of famous people that we know today. And one of those comes to mind right now, Steve Jobs. You know, when he started talking about the mouse, as we know it today, being able to go in any direction, not just up and down, left and right, but just all over
the computer
all
mouse.
over them. Yeah, sorry. The computer mouse, the keyboard. You know, he had the idea of how that mouse should be able to do whatever, you know, go in any direction. And he went to his engineer team, and they're like, oh, no, it can't be done. And had he stayed in his comfort zone, or had he pursued building computers in moderation, we would know what we know today. Or, somebody else would have beaten him to the punch, like even Google or Facebook, all these things that said, we're going to go outside of moderation. The car, like it's so much bigger than what it used to be. Like, had those inventors or those envisionaries or visionaries said, nah, that's, let's stay within this moderation scale, we'd either be really behind in technology, so to speak, or we wouldn't have what we have today, or somebody else would beat them to the punch. So I'm thankful for those people, and to an extent, I'm hoping that in some areas of my life, I'm not held back by this moderation mentality, because I think that's disappointing. Somebody, I forget who, forgive me, somebody's going to know this. I assume we've probably all heard it. There's a quote or a song that talks about the cemeteries and all the dreams and songs that went unsung, and the books unwritten, and the lives untouched because the people that died missed an opportunity or didn't do what they could have done in the time they were given. Maybe it's because life ended abruptly, or maybe it was because they stayed in their comfort zone, or they were committed to this moderation mentality.
Yeah, I agree. I like that. And I really like the title of that book, The Obstacle is the Way. Because, I feel like I've learned to enjoy the feeling of being nervous. Because I know that often that feeling is followed by something really amazing and maybe something that I have accomplished. Like, if I'm nervous about something and questioning whether I can even get it done, then that's how I know that I'm going to feel great if it does get done. And I think the only way it seems that we can know if we're reaching our full potential is if we fail. Like, how do you even know, right? Like, maybe it's 10 steps beyond where you were, but you don't know until you fail. And you're like, oh, all right, there's the limit right there.
One of my favorite things that comes to mind, one of my life lessons, if you will, Colin Meyer helped me kind of see it this way. He's a CMO, a friend of ours at Rialto Pharmaceutical. He likes to race cars amateurly, on the weekends or whatever. And talking about racing is that, when you have a car, whether it's a Civic or a Porsche, in order to find the limit of that vehicle, you've got to push it. Otherwise, you'll never know what the limit is, right? You don't know what the limit is until you cross it. And like he said, oh, there's the limit. Don't do that again. And even though he was talking about racing vehicles, that sticks with me in all walks of life, because I'm like, the principle is true no matter what you're talking about. You won't know the limit of the thing or even of yourself until you've crossed that line. And hopefully you cross it into a safety net or a safe zone, and you can go back and rework it a little bit. Hopefully it's not like the end of a cliff where you find your limit and life's over. But the idea would be, pushing those limits a little bit. And I really, that quote or that mentality sticks with me even beyond racing a car. I'm never going to know it until I cross it.
Right. And you know what, Sean, the idea of the safety net that you might crash into or something is a good point, because I think when you're in the practice of pushing your limits to potential failure, right, you need to build in some safety to that so that it doesn't ruin everything, right? And so I guess I'm saying this idea, it's not about being reckless and being crazy. It's about understanding the process, getting to that limit, and making sure that if you fail, it's going to be into a net or, something like that.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point too. I don't remember exactly how you said it, but you talk about being in the practice of pushing a limit. If you're not in the practice, if you're not making it a habit, you won't know how to build a safety net or a failure kind of backup plan. So I like that you point that out. We don't want to be completely reckless in our lives, but we also don't want to stay strapped in our seatbelt. You know, we want to kind of push the envelope a little bit, get out, stay the edge, and the more we do that, the more we'll get familiar with what's safe and what's holding us back.
So I want to give another example that happened recently this summer. I had an opportunity to go on RAGBRAI. The Register, the Des Moines Register is a newspaper, and it was started by them. It's the Register's annual Great Bike Ride Across Iowa. And it goes literally from border to border across the entire state. The whole ride is 7 days. I did 3, but with 17,000 other people. And it was such an amazing experience. So the days that I went, the first day was 70 miles. The second day was 40. And the third day was 85. And I'm just looking at this going, oh my gosh, I haven't ridden that much this year or as much as in the past. I don't know if I can do this. Should I give it a try? All right, let's give it a try and see what happens. And it was amazing. I felt pretty good the whole time, to my surprise. And so check this out. You get in the flow. It's this like just a river of like bicyclists for miles. I don't even know, 20, 30 miles. I don't even know how long it is. There's like no beginning and no end. You look in front of you, and all you can see as far as the road goes is bikes. And you look behind you, same thing. It's crazy. And so my dad was wearing our Ride a Taxi jersey. And on the lower part of it, on the pocket, for listeners, like, cycling jerseys have a pocket on the lower back, and that's like the most, if you want to put a message on a jersey, you put it right there, because if someone's coming up behind you, and there were a lot of people coming up behind us because we're not that fast, but so anyway, it says, I ride to Cure FA on it, and like probably 10 times every day. I was there for 3 days. But my dad was riding right behind me, so I heard him every time. But they would say, "Hey, what's FA?" And so it was amazing to be in this sea of humanity and be like, "I am so insignificant here. We are so insignificant. 3 people among 17,000, and then to be, spreading the word about FA in that it was really an amazing experience. And I guess the point is that I would have never done that if I saw the mileage and I was like, no way I can do that right now. Like,
right.
So anyway,
and I think to your point, doing it enough, it's a little outside of your comfort zone, but it's also fairly safe.
Yeah.
But going back to that very first ride, there was nothing safe about it because you'd never done it before.
Right.
But the more you do it, the more you push that limit, the further out your limit gets, and the more risk you're willing to take, because okay, it's if I can't make it up that hill or around that corner or those miles, it's not the end of the world.
That's a good point.
I would much rather be somebody, and I think you would agree, I'd much rather be somebody that says, I climbed Mount Whitney, I stood on top of White Mountain, I rode my bike across the country, I did X, Y, and Z, much rather than somebody that said, oh, that would be cool.
Yeah.
It would be cool to stand on top of that mountain. It would be cool to ride those miles, but I've never even tried.
So, Sean, I feel like we're using a lot of examples that requires some kind of physical ability. And a lot of what we talk about on this podcast is disability, right? That's in the title. And to those listeners out there who are saying to themselves right now, like, I can't do any of this. Like, I'm in a wheelchair all the time. I can't even hardly brush my teeth, whatever it is, right? What would be your message to that question and that thought in somebody's head?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because I'm with you. It doesn't always have to be an issue of physical ability, but maybe it's just meeting new people. Maybe it's just going to an event where maybe you're a little scared or uncomfortable. I think even just things like that are life-changing or can be life-impacting. So even though you may not be able to go out and play volleyball or ride a bike, go make some new friends. Go maybe do something different on your computer or a plan. Maybe start writing a journal or a book or a blog. Something that is outside of your comfort zone, no matter how big or small, is a way of redefining your comfort zone, which ultimately is the point.
Yeah, and I think that once you take a small step to expand your horizon, your comfort zone, then it will continue. You know what I mean? And so what might seem insignificant, which actually is probably not, like just meeting someone new, right? Maybe that encourages you, holy cow, nothing terrible happened. Maybe I can do this again. And so I was watching this YouTube video. I think it's the Dating Coach on Wheels. And he had a video about, like, it made me nervous. He was going around in his wheelchair just introducing himself to girls. Wow. And like getting numbers for like an hour. I was like, well, I get them all randomly, and so anyway, you talking about just meeting new people, finding ways to get out of your comfort zone, just be in that practice all the time. So
I think I like that you pointed out. A lot of us, even me, we kind of get held back by rejection. Think about all the actors that we know today, or actresses, that went through years of rejection, and now they're, seemingly on top of the world. I think about Abraham Lincoln. How many times did he try to become president? And now he's like probably the most famous U.S. president we've ever had. Even he probably outdoes George Washington in that manner. So yeah, I like that you point that out, because maybe it will take 100 phone numbers before that one actually answers the phone. Yeah. But you never would have found that one had you not gone through the 100. So
yep.
Great conversation, good idea. Ultimately, redefine your comfort zone and get rid of that moderation mentality would be the overall message.
Yep, I agree. Good stuff.
All right, folks, thanks for listening today. We hope there's something insightful for you and maybe applicable to your life. Kyle and I look forward to catching up with you next week. In the meantime, please find us on Facebook, social media, Instagram, whatever it may be, and we look forward to talking to you soon. Thank you for listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast.
Find us online at twodisableddudes.com, and please subscribe on the iTunes. Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
And special thanks to our audio producer, Jake Tompkins.
Until next time, keep living with urgency.